For being here. My name is Caleb Strite. I'm the editor of the Record Argus, and I'd like to welcome you to the Record Argus Town Hall on Drugs. Since our country began, newspapers have been the gold standard for providing information to the public. Where that kind of falls short, and for all media, I think, is that unfortunately we as humans don't always believe something until we're in the same room with it. That becomes a challenge with this kind of problem. Logistically, I couldn't put you all in the same room as the drug problem, even a segment of it, nor would that be very responsible. So instead, we've done the next best thing, and perhaps even the best thing. We've got a panel here of 12 people who know the local problem as good or better than anybody else. I've talked to each of them. They're extremely knowledgeable and are facing this thing on a daily basis in different ways. And we have some local law enforcement. We have treatment and prevention specialists. We have a state senator. We have different professionals in the field. We have people from local perspectives, from a state perspective, and from the county perspective, all with the goal of giving all of you an idea of what the drug problem in our area actually looks like, how big it is, what's currently being done to combat it, what else could be done, and also hopefully for parents and other family members and concerned community members, maybe a few tools to help you if you ever have to face these kind of things. And with those goals in mind, I just want to start out by establishing that in fact we do have a problem. I didn't mention that I was going to do this, but from our panelists, I'd like to ask you by a show of hands, how many believe that Mercer County has a drug problem? And that's why we're here tonight. But considering that we are currently in the borough of Greenville, for me it makes the most sense to talk to the man I probably talked the most about the problem in Greenville borough, specifically Paul Moulton. He's a sergeant with the Greenville West Salem Township Police Department, and he's spoken recently in some of our articles about it. But Paul, you've been at this for about 18 years. Can you tell us how things have changed over that time and how bad things are right now?
Like Caleb said, Sergeant Moulton, the Greenville Police Department, and I'd just like to say thanks to Caleb for putting this on and for the community members to show up, and obviously that there is a problem. Everybody would like to be able to find the magic bullet to fix it. Like I said, my 18 years started out with the heroin problem back in the late 90s. That drug problem went away, was taken over by prescription medication, your Oxycontin, Percocets, Vicodin. Now we've come full circle again to that heroin problem, and also more recently, methamphetamines. We've had a lot of meth labs that have been found here in Mercer County, especially Greenville and Hempfield. It's just like anything else, society has its ups and its downs. Right now with the generation that we're looking at, age group, just dealing with from the 20 to 30-year-olds, probably the biggest portion of our heroin addiction. Along comes with that is a crack cocaine and methamphetamines. It's not, doesn't say it doesn't hit our high school kids, but fortunately at this point we haven't seen it in our high school. At any of the schools here in the Greenville School District, we still see a little bit of marijuana with that generation, but I think the generation we're looking is the 20 to 30 years old with the heroin addiction. And now with the meth, we didn't really see it over the years. Usually it was Venango and Crawford County with the methamphetamines, but just recently, probably within the last year, we've had our fair share of more meth.
Yeah, I know. I think we've all noticed the rash of meth busts recently, both in your municipality and also in Dan's. One note, you'll see in your program that Hempfield Township Police Chief Dave Morgan had planned to be here. He ran into some unforeseen circumstances and was unable to. Dan McCloskey, though, the chief always tells me he actually knows more about this stuff, so this is probably actually better. Dan McCloskey is an officer with the Hempfield Township Police Department. From what I hear, you have a good handle of what's going on in your township, but you're also involved with some efforts with the Attorney General's office. Can you talk about what you're seeing in your township and also that other effort?
In Hempfield Township, when I started back in '07, it was more of a marijuana, a little bit of crack, a little bit of pills. And over the time, the cycle, it comes in and out, and it's involved to the heroin, then the heroin involved to the heroin mixed with fentanyl, which is more potent and more deadly to people when they get into their systems. And then now we're at the point where meth has declined a little bit, and the heroin's declined a little bit, and the methamphetamines come up, and it's starting to, supersede that to a certain aspect. The methamphetamine is bad in so many ways, as far as the fire risk, the explosion risk, the gases it gives off to people, can kill you in an instant. It's this point, it's worse off. We're seeing, especially in Hempfield, we're starting to see it in Greenville Borough and also down in the Pymatuming Township with the methamphetamine, and that's an overflow from Crawford County, north of us here.
And the work you've been doing with the Attorney General's office, I understand there's a lot of knowledge you're getting through that.
Correct.
Very good. We'll move on next to the sheriff. Sheriff Gary Hartman, you have much more of a county level view of this thing. Tell us a little bit about what your responsibilities are and how they intersect with the drug problem and what you're seeing.
Thank you, Caleb. Not only on the criminal side, we're also dealing with it on the correction side. So we're seeing it on all different levels. Currently, within our jail facility, we have a high percentage of some type of narcotic addiction, along with various other issues. From the county side, what Officer Molden had said is really spot on. Up until about 6 or 7 years ago, crack cocaine was our biggest problem. We're dealing with that, trying to keep a handle on that, and we've seen a huge resurgence of the pill issue, narcotic-based pills. It was perceived as a clean drug of choice because, hey, it's FDA approved and a prescription type drugs. The problem that came into play is the fact that these type of drugs are very, very expensive. So the demand stayed there for the addiction, and the void was filled by heroin because it's very cheap. We're seeing, and I'm sure our county coroner is going to talk about it, the associated overdoses with that problem, sometimes caused by loaded heroin, such as having fentanyl mixed with it. We're working not only locally, but jointly through our fusion center that works through the FBI, the state police, our local agencies, to not only try to head some of these suppliers off, but identify some of the drug compounds and mixtures so we can take that back to the dealers, try to cut the head of the snake off. So we realize it's, from an enforcement side, it's a very widespread problem, and the funnel for the heroin coming in is a very widespread network from different areas throughout our country and out of country. Our local municipalities, our county and our state agencies can't do that alone, so we're working with the other agencies to try to head some of that stuff off.
Thanks, Gary. Our next panelist is our district attorney, Miles Carson. First of all, appreciate you being here. I don't know that people always understand your position and how that works. Could you first explain how drug cases get to your desk and what you do with them once they're there?
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me in the back? Good. I'm new to being the district attorney. Spent 14 years as an assistant DA, but this is year one. And I'm now getting a view from 30,000 feet of the entire county and the multiple issues that we have to deal with. Now, Mr. Straight's pointed question of how the cases get to me, not real complicated. Police go out through intelligence. They end up arresting people, charging them with drug violations, and that begins the process. But really, what we're facing here in Mercer County, we're facing multiple types of cases. And if you've read the newspaper over the course of this year, You'll remember back early in the year, the state police made a stop and an arrest on Interstate 80, and it turned out that in a false compartment there were 9 pounds of heroin. And there were 2 occupants of the vehicle, the driver and passenger. One was from the Dominican Republic, one was from Mexico. Turns out that this 9 pounds of heroin has a give or take street value of about $4 million. The individuals were arrested. We charged them in Mercer County. Not too long after that, a man driving a fruit truck was stopped by state police drug interdiction people on the interstate. There were signs of criminal activity. There was a search of the vehicle. There were 88 pounds of cocaine in that vehicle. We charged them here in Mercer County. In both of those situations, those vehicles were traveling from the Chicago area or in the Midwest to either Philadelphia, New York, or Boston. One of the things that we've been doing, that I've been doing in my first 5 months, is developing a relationship with federal people. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Pittsburgh, the DEA, the FBI, ATF, Homeland Security. They're all interested in drug interdiction. If you think about it, the cases that are developed off of the interstate where they're going from Chicago to New York, the people who are operating those vehicles have knowledge and have intelligence that can be used by federal people a lot better than us here locally. And so one of the things that I've reached an agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office is that in certain cases, I will pick and choose, and in the heroin case and the cocaine case, I'm turning those over to the federal authorities for prosecution. The cocaine person was just recently indicted and an arrest warrant issued by the federal courts, and I dropped the state charges, and he will be taken off to Pittsburgh and prosecuted in federal court. They can use the intelligence much better than we can. They can do with info in Chicago and New York. I can't do anything with it. They have a much bigger hammer than I have. The biggest hammer I have is 7.5 to 15 years if I convict these people. The feds have 20 to 40 years. They have a lot more leverage. So in certain cases, you'll be reading in a newspaper that the FBI or the U.S. Attorney's Office have taken over drug cases. That will be the underlying theory. Now, other drug cases will be prosecuted by our office if they're local. And our piece of the puzzle, or our piece of the pie, maybe that's a better analogy, and I view each of us up here as having a piece of this problem, of this epidemic. I don't have a magic wand for cures, but I have the ability to prosecute people and potentially put them in jail. If you're a drug dealer in Mercer County, from my perspective, if I have the evidence, we'll have a zero tolerance. As you come down the line and you get lower and lower on the usage scale, there may be some variation. You may read about some variation in the paper that'll be characterized as maybe a plea bargain for someone who's a user, particularly if they're a first-time offender, and particularly if they're amenable to treatment. Because we all know we're all smart enough and mature enough to know that people don't get fixed by a pill or magic wand or because we want them fixed. They have to internally want to do that. When we have those kinds of cases, I will be amenable to the idea of treatment and rehabilitation. But if that addict is out in the street sticking a gun in someone's face, robbing someone, burglarizing a home, that won't happen. That won't happen. Maybe the system will be able to treat them, but first and foremost, I'll prosecute them. That's my role. That's the role of the district attorney. These policemen do a hell of a job. They produce great cases, and it's our job to prosecute them. When these men here were part of the Mercer County Drug Task Force that was being run by the Attorney General's office, they would be involved in using confidential informants out in the street. Confidential informants might make controlled purchases of drugs for them. Based on that information, they could get a search warrant. They could bust a house, do a search of a home, get the culprit, get the drug dealer, get the drugs, get the goods, charge them, and we prosecute them. One of the other things that I'm looking into at this point here in Mercer County is I'm looking at the prospect, the possibility of taking over the Mercer County Drug Task Force and running it through the District Attorney's office instead of through the Attorney General's office. Under the basic idea or concept that we bring it down local, we have local police, we have local eyes, and we have local enforcement because we have ears and eyes on the streets. And hopefully with that type of an approach, we can do a more effective job from an enforcement point of view. That's going to depend on dollars and cents, and that's part of what I'm looking into now in terms of how we can fund a local Mercer County Drug Task Force. So you may be reading about that in the paper. If it doesn't happen this year, I'm hoping for sure to have it happen by next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Our next panelist is our coroner, John Libinati. John, like Mr. Carson just mentioned, you're kind of new on the job as well, but you've kind of come on full steam. When you are faced with this problem, it's usually when people are coming to the end of the line with their problem. I think you've taken that pretty seriously. You've taken on a new initiative to get a better handle on overdoses and the drug problem. Can you tell the folks a little bit about what you're doing?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Caleb. And again, I'd like to join in commending the Record Argus for taking that step forward and to putting this together. I feel it's very important, and I'll talk about that in a second. But for over 30 years, I've been involved with emergency services. I've seen the problem really escalate over that first 30 years as a first responder out there taking care of people in their homes, as well as for the last 9 years as a coroner, the last 5 months as your county coroner. But it is a very challenging situation, and we've all, no matter who you are, have either directly or indirectly been exposed to an adult family member or a youth family member that is making a bad decision and that has been taken away and have followed those things in life away from their family values. And it's a challenge. I have the misfortune of being countywide to being directly involved with the investigation of death at the scene and coordinating that throughout all the communities in Mercer County. And whenever we looked at this brochure, it says drug abuse is everyone's problem. The first question that you asked is, who thinks we have a problem in Mercer County? I can tell you that it's not just in Mercer County. There's a drug problem, and we're all a part of that in one way or another. And we need everyone's involvement. It's a challenge for me, and I'm not just the coroner. I'm a father of 3 kids. I understand the challenges with raising kids. When we were younger, my age, and it said it in the paper the other day that Molly did a great article on, was that our parents didn't want us to smoke and drink. Now we're happy if they don't do crack or heroin. And it's very easy for them to obtain. And it is a hidden evil that we have to attack because it is destroying families, it's destroying lives. Even if they become an addict and they get off of that, it still shortens your life significantly because of the pathophysiology that the effects of those drugs have on your body and the substances in there. The challenge that we have are the drug manufacturers are smart. They come out with new products and new products. Now it's not just, and as Gary, insinuated that I'm going to touch on, it's not just heroin, it's not just meth, it's also they mix it with fentanyl. Now fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine. And a small amount of that product can be shared and gone a long way and hidden very easily. And the main distributor for the United States right now is China. Now, in Philadelphia, there was just a release through the Coroners Association of Pennsylvania